Welcome to Across the Balkans. Great to have you with us on the show. I'm Nafisa Latic. As we enter the second year of the conflict, the needs of Ukrainians who had to flee their homes remain immense. Russia's attack has so far internally displaced over 5 million people and forced more than 8 million others to flee to neighboring countries. As some countries still struggle with how to accommodate Ukrainian refugees, some of them are now seeking long-term solutions to offer them greater inclusion into their societies. But with the conflict showing no sign of abating, many challenges still lie ahead. The UN says the conflict in Ukraine has created the biggest refugee crisis since the end of the Second World War, and humanitarian needs are likely to grow. Let's take a look at the situation in the Balkans, where most countries have opened their doors to Ukrainians seeking asylum. Bulgaria and Romania are among the Balkan countries that host the highest number of Ukrainian refugees. Around 1.1 million people entered Bulgaria since the conflict started in February last year. The Bulgarian government registered over 150,000 for temporary protection. But the UN says two-thirds of those who came to Bulgaria have left the country, and around 50,000 displaced Ukrainians reside in Bulgaria currently. In neighbouring Romania, there are around 110,000 refugees from Ukraine. The United Nations and its partners are appealing for $43.4 million to assist the Bulgarian government. With this funding, the UN aims to provide aid for up to 200,000 Ukrainian refugees in Bulgaria.
Well, right now we're heading for Bulgaria. We have some friends there and some family, but our family was basically torn apart because I had to leave my parents and my husband at home. And I hope that when this is over, and I hope this is over soon, we'll still have a home to go back to.
And just last month, the Bulgarian Interior Minister said the protection scheme for Ukrainian refugees in the country would be extended.
Bulgaria is making efforts to integrate those who permanently stay in Bulgaria, to find them jobs and proper education, but also to distinguish refugees from Ukrainian tourists who had flooded the country.
Let's try to understand the situation more and cross to Sofia. Boris Cheshirkov is there. He is a spokesperson for the UN Refugee Agency. And Zornica Gecheva, she is a coordinator at the National Association of Volunteers of Bulgarian government, where she is organizing the humanitarian aid to Ukrainian refugees. Hello to both of you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Zornica, when we look at the numbers, some reports say around two-thirds of those who came to Bulgaria have already left elsewhere. What is Bulgaria offering to those who stayed?
Yes, these numbers are kind of right. Maybe half of them, they said, stay here for longer. What we offer first residence in what is the humanitarian aid for the government. We provide accommodation, and the places that the people are accommodated, there is also food, of course. Many of the NGOs, organizations, they also provide medical assistance, sometimes medical care, depends what their donors can provide. Also, at the national level, we are very strong in language courses, because what we see so far is that people would stay, they might stay longer. So this is one aspect that we are working on with also on the government level, not only the NGOs. The other things that we are trying to do, the society, is to help them find job, to be more secure and independent, of course, because this aid is maybe not short term, but it's not so stable. The people need to be more independent. So we are trying really to help them feel safe, first of all, to have a shelter first, second, and to see the way they can be independent here, and the healthcare system to help them integrate better in the society with having health secure, to be health secure here.
Mhm.
If I
Bo-
answer you.
Yes. Boris, the UN has appealed for $43 million to assist the Bulgarian government in providing support to these people. I've just mentioned it in our intro. Give us more details on what this help entails, and will it be granted and when?
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to participate here. What we see now as the war in Ukraine enters its second year is a need for sustained support and solidarity. And what the UN organizations in Bulgaria, together with our humanitarian partners, have done just recently and this is in support, of course, of the government-led response, is an appeal to donors to help us find up to 43.4 million United States dollars. And this would be to help those Ukrainian refugees that are now in the country and potentially those that may be arriving until the end of the year. And the way that we will be supporting is for those that are most vulnerable to continue to help them with cash assistance, with relief items that they still need, especially as winter is continuing. And then as we head into, and Zunice has already mentioned, what is our shift from emergency assistance to longer term support for people to become self-reliant so that they can invest in their skills, they can enter the workforce, and they're able to support themselves. This is through efforts to work with employers, efforts to work with institutions, with civil society, with the private sector, with academia, so that we can come together and support those people that need still protection, education, access to their rights and services. So that technical support will continue, and we will be relying on our donors to help us. Of course, we're not doing this alone. We're 18 partners in Bulgaria. And what is unique in the context of this country is if we compare it to others in the region that are in the Ukraine response, is that outside the 4 UN agencies, UNHCR, UNICEF, WHO, and IOM that are active here under this plan, we have 14 national association, national NGO partners, and this is really the strong drive of civil society, which we've seen over the course of 2022. In fact, the solidarity that's been shown by Bulgarian people and Bulgaria's government has been immense. We're talking about over 1 million refugees from Ukraine that have transited through Bulgaria. About 50,000 now remain in the country, and they need this extended solidarity and support.
Yes, I do want to focus more on the sustainable solutions for them. As you mentioned, Boris, we passed that emergency phase, but the conflict doesn't show any signs of slowing down or being stopped in the near future. So, Zornica, you mentioned finding jobs for these people. We know that Bulgaria in the past, especially during the COVID crisis, had a problem with the lack of medical workers, for example, because it has the same problem as many countries in the region, people leaving for other countries in the Western Europe. Can these people help in and get help and get more jobs in the medical sector, for example? And how to work towards that?
Depends. Depends of their education, of the status they already achieved, and how our system would integrate the level they have already and how to be implicated here in Bulgaria. But yes, it has our Ministry of Health, and of course the Ministry of Social Affairs is also working on this to be more easy, this procedure to not be so heavy for them to, but we already have specialists that are working on different other sectors. I'm not sure about the health exactly, this sector, but we have people that are working in the IT sector, many. And of course, during the summer period, we have many people working in hotels and other not for, or maybe shorter term.
Boris, bearing in mind the political crisis that Bulgaria is facing and the fact that it's currently led by a caretaker government, we are heading towards another election. What do you make of the protection scheme for Ukrainian refugees, and what does it include, and how difficult is to work having in mind this current political crisis in the country on top of everything?
Well, now that the war has entered the second year, so has something which is extremely important in the context of the European Union. This is temporary protection. The temporary protection directive, and Bulgaria was one of the first countries to roll it out, has been providing this access to rights and services for refugees coming from Ukraine. It has now been extended until March the 4th, 2024, and the government is right now rolling out an exercise to re-register those approximately 50,000 people that are here. And this is giving a bit of additional support and certainty for those that are here and the ones that are newly arriving. We still consistently see every single day that people are continuing to come in. And then the humanitarian program, the scheme that exists now, it is aligned with the end of the registration period, which is the 31st of March, so until the end of this month. And then ultimately it will have to be extended in some form. We don't know yet. And of course, as you say, elections are also coming and they coincide. But one of the understandings that we have, and is what we're advocating for, is those that have heightened risk, those that belong to specific groups that have more special needs, more specific needs, that they are able to receive continued support, better support. This is also somewhere where UNHCR is stepping in, including through cash assistance, including through relief items and the work of our partners, but then also the socio-economic inclusion support. So what we have in Bulgaria, and this is true for most of the countries in the region, is a majority women and children. We have about 85% of everyone who has come in, and this is also not considering the age groups. We have elderly as well, but 85% are women and children. Many of them are single mothers. Many of them are coming with master's degrees, bachelor's degrees, doctorates, skills that they have acquired, professions. At the same time, they might need childcare. They might need language support. They might need the network that will allow them to enter the job market, get a well-paying job, find the livelihood that will support them, being self-reliant. So all of this is cascading and will need to be worked through. Of course, the government needs support in this regard. We have expertise. We also have a network of good practices across the region, which we're sharing with the government. And regardless of the outcome of the elections, we'll be very happy to continue working with the administration here.
Zornica, you spent, I imagine, a lot of time with these people. 1 year on, since the beginning of the conflict in Ukraine, what are their main concerns? Boris just mentioned, we are talking here mostly about women and children who arrived in Bulgaria.
Their main concerns are that they are not sure what to expect, neither here, neither in their country of origin. So this is something that I think all of the other countries, not only Bulgaria, but we need to be more focused now on to maybe to say for sure that they're safe here in our country, that we are doing our best to protect them, that they can just be relaxed to whatever the decision the government or the other NGO can do for, I mean, the strategy that they provide for supporting for humanitarian help would be for their best. And the other thing, which is maybe my own concern and the NGOs that I'm working with, is to find more stable mechanism to protect them for traffic and maybe some other not very legal aspects of their stay, because as Boris also said, they are vulnerable groups. They're women that maybe for them is very hard to find job, or maybe they are anxious to accept all the possible offers that find, but still we need to legalize this process of working. So
Zornica, moving forward, what do you see as the main stumbling blocks in achieving everything that you were just mentioning?
For us here in our society is now the political situation with the elections and all that stuff, because the decisions maybe are not made so long term in a way.
Boris, what do you think moving forward, the main stumbling blocks, having in mind all these problems that Bulgarians already have by themselves? On top of that, 1.1 million Ukrainians passed through the country. It's not a great mood for them as well, having in mind everything that's happening at the moment.
And solidarity that Bulgarians have shown, Bulgarian people, civil society, the Bulgarian authorities, local authorities, different municipalities that have come forward. But we also need to recognize that this war is continuing. It's continuing, the devastation, the destruction. They have been staggering, and they've forced one of the largest, the biggest, and the fastest growing displacement crisis in Europe since the Second World War. So we're talking about 8 million refugees. 5 million people displaced within Ukraine. And as the shelling continues, we expect that the needs inside Ukraine, the humanitarian needs, are going to remain very high. In Bulgaria, many of those that have stayed are from the east and from the south of Ukraine, areas which continue to see a lot of difficulty. So we can see many people that we speak to, everyone that we speak with, they say, I want to go home. I'm concerned about my family that's back home. But at the same time, in order to return, they must do this in safety and dignity. And safety still needs to be secured with the war going on. This is definitely problematic. And people, although they intend to go home, they don't intend to do it soon. And this means that they need to be supported, and that continuing solidarity is necessary.
Right, and this crisis is not going away, as we all stressed since the beginning of our conversation. Boris and Zornica, thank you both for joining us from Sofia. Let's look at other stories making headlines in the region this week. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić has denied allegations that his country is supplying weapons to either Ukraine or Russia. The Kremlin asked Belgrade to clarify its position on the conflict after some Russian media and social media platforms claimed Serbia delivered missiles to Ukraine via Slovakia and Türkiye. Serbia is one of Russia's closest allies and has so far resisted imposing Western sanctions on Moscow, although it has condemned the attacks.
I can claim with complete responsibility that Serbia does not give permission to export arms or military equipment to any country that we believe, from an international point of view, would be problematic in any way.
In ongoing negotiations between Belgrade and Pristina, Serbia has dashed hopes once again by ruling out signing the EU plan. Serbian President Vučić says it's due to articles that refer to mutual recognition and Kosovo joining the United Nations. In late February, both countries agreed to endorse the deal but said more work was needed to implement it. But now Kosovo's Prime Minister Albin Kurti says Vučić is clearly breaching the EU proposal by opposing Kosovo's membership to the UN. Montenegro's Supreme Court has called for heightened security in courts. The move comes in response to an explosion at the Constitutional Court building in the capital Podgorica on Friday that killed one person and injured at least 5 others. Police say a person detonated the bomb at the court's entrance in what's believed to be a suicide attack. Government and court buildings have been receiving hoax bomb threats in recent weeks, which have led to several evacuations. And the protests continue in Greece after last week's train crash left at least 57 people dead. Hundreds of people attended a rally organized by the Greek Communist Party in Athens over the weekend. The party's executive called the accident a premeditated crime caused by policies that prioritize profit, while protesters shouted the crime should not be covered up. Greece's prime minister apologized on behalf of both himself and the government while referring to a human error in the collision. The country's transport minister has since submitted his resignation. On the sidelines of a recent G20 meeting, Turkish foreign minister thanked his Croatian counterpart for supporting Türkiye after two major earthquakes hit the country's south. Search and rescue teams from all over the world poured into Türkiye following the quakes, and together with local teams managed to save thousands of people trapped under the rubble. Veljko Skenderija spoke to the Croatian rescuers who spent days searching for survivors.
It's dusk, and after a day of preparing and loading equipment, the Croatian rescue team is now ready to leave. And there is little doubt in their minds. They just have to get to Türkiye as soon as possible to help rescue people buried in the rubble.
Negdje u 9 ujutro sam ja saznao da se radi o velikoj katastrofi i već do 3 popodne sam bio spreman i na putu za Jasku, odakle smo kretali za Tursku. Stvari smo stavili u naša vozila u kojima smo onda u stvari proveli većinu puta koji je trajao gotovo 3 dana. Pokušavali smo što manje stajati, naravno kako bi što prije došli, kako bi naš odgovor imao što veći učinak.
The rescuers say it's their professional, moral, but above all, human duty to respond. The final destination for this Croatian team of 41 people and 7 dogs is Antakya, a city that before the earthquake had 200,000 inhabitants. Today, it's almost unrecognizable.
Niko nije dovoljno jak da se sam bori protiv takve nesreće, a istovremeno ostavlja prostora da međunarodni timovi daju potporu domaćim timovima u spašavanju. Oni imaju fantastične timove. Ako se ne varam, 11 specijaliziranih timova za spašavanje iz ruševina, od toga 2 klasificirana preko Insarak sistema.
Marević praises the Turkish organization that made it possible for international teams to come on site. But even though they knew of the magnitude of the earthquake, they were not prepared for what awaited them. Croatian rescuers say they have been in this business for a really long time, having seen the most devastating earthquakes over the past few decades. But for them, when it comes to the scale of destruction and suffering, the February 6th earthquakes are on a completely different level.
Po dolasku tamo bilo je apsolutno jasno da, što je prikazano u medijima, da je to još puno veći razmjer cijelog tog razaranja. Svakako jedan od potresa koji će definitivno ući u udžbenike i literaturu, što po svojoj snazi, što po samim učincima i broju ljudi koji su stradali. I jednostavno, rekla bi da je nadmašilo sva naša očekivanja u trenutku kad smo se našli tamo.
The Croatian team worked 24 hours a day. Their role was to search for traces of life under hills of concrete and then direct local excavators to dig at those sites. And at their very first intervention, they faced with a terrible scene. A grandfather and his 4-year-old grandson had died just half a meter from the exit.
Oni su bili zatrpani dovoljno, rekao bih, lako da naši ljudi to mogu brzo otkopati i raščistiti taj materijal. Čisto zato, bez obzira što smo znali da je vrijeme za žive osobe tu presudna, ali to je toliko malo vremena bilo potrebno da se ta tijela izvuku van, pa makar da obiteljima bude to potvrđeno.
Marević says one psyche is affected not just by the sight of dead bodies, but also by the grief of relatives, many who waited for days in front of houses to help rescuers find their family members. And the authorities provided them with food and accommodation.
Njihove vlasti su se dosta dobro snašle u nekakvom inicijalnom pružanju pomoći ljudima. Ljudi su zapravo brinuli su se jedni za druge, bili su dosta aktivni, nisu bili u nekakvom šoku da ne znaju što bi od sebe, nego su stvarno uzeli stvari u svoje ruke i pomagali jedni drugima koliko se da u tim uvjetima. To je mene zapravo dosta impresioniralo.
The team left Antakya after 7 days and returned to Croatia. They will now be provided with mental health treatment to prevent the development of PTSD. But they say they are ready to respond to any additional requests from Türkiye, and that they have not forgotten the aid that Ankara sent in 2020 when earthquakes destroyed the cities of Petrinja and Sisak, including the container homes that still put a roof over the heads of many Croatians today. Veljko Skenderija, TRT World, Zagreb, Croatia.
That's it from us for this week. See you next time. Bye-bye for now.